Hi, my name is Rick Rapetti, and I will be instructing this course on Indian philosophy for wisdom in everyday life. This is my preface to the course. There are 5 units. Each week we will meet 5 weeks in a row for 2 hours. But before Unit 1, I thought it would be wise to prepare an introductory overview so that I didn't have to cut into the time of the first unit, because each unit is on a distinct Indian philosophy. Okay, so let me share my screen and we will get to it. Okay. So once again, my name is Rick Rapetti. I am a full professor of philosophy at Kingsborough, one of the colleges in the City University of New York, or CUNY. I'm also a vice president and co-director of the APPA Board of Examiners. The APPA is the American Philosophical Practitioners Association, which is where you had to register and become a member just in order to even take the course. I'm also a meditation instructor. I've been guiding meditations for decades. I'm doing it officially now with the Vervaeke Foundation. And I'm also a chief philosophy officer for a tech startup company called Knowledge Coin. Okay, so here's my pre-course preparation, introduction, and overview. So let's start with our agenda for this session today. I have a preface, an overview of each of the 5 sessions, very brief. A brief introduction to philosophy, because in order to really place Indian philosophy in your conceptual map, it's good to know what philosophy is so that you can see it's one kind of philosophy. And then before we get into Indian philosophy, it's wise to paint a picture about the context of the ancient Indian mythical era, just like Western philosophy begins in ancient Greece and Rome. And so in order to really place the beginnings of philosophy in the West, you look at the Greek polytheism myths and stuff like that. And then you see how philosophers started questioning that sort of thing. And then we'll get into actual intro to Indian philosophy. I'll say some general things about that. And I'm going to give you a sample, simple sample meditation. That'll only be a few minutes. Because we will be doing meditations each week. That is a kind of primary technology, psychotechnology in Indian philosophy, shared by all 5 of the schools that we're going to be covering. Okay, so my preface. One thing, if you looked online and saw the outline of the course, you saw that I had units 1 and 2 in this sequence. Vedanta, that's one form of philosophy. And unit 2 was the Bhagavad Gita, which is a text, but it has a lot of philosophy in it. But I realized that I should switch that. So now it's unit 1 is the Bhagavad Gita, and unit 2, which I didn't write. I should have wrote that. But it makes more sense for me to switch it. And here's the reason why. Because the Bhagavad Gita addresses all 3 major paths or yogas that include what's called Vedanta, and also yoga itself, which is unit 3. So since the Bhagavad Gita includes Vedanta and yoga as distinct schools, and then unit 3 is yoga itself, it made more sense for me to do it this way. Okay, so I switched those around. All right, so now let me overview the 5 sessions. So there are 3 orthodox Indian philosophies that we'll be studying out of 6 major orthodox philosophies. So in week 1, as I just mentioned, we'll be doing the Bhagavad Gita, which is, I think, the most beloved scripture in Indian religion and philosophy, and it's on the 3 major paths to oneness with God. Week 2 is Vedanta, which is about oneness, but then within Vedanta, there's disputes about whether or not there's just one and everything is God, or maybe there's God and everything else, or maybe it's both combined in some way. So there are three philosophies that fall under the Vedanta category. Week 3 is the famous book called the Yoga Sutras, written by an ancient sage and yogi in India thousands of years ago. It's the premier meditation manual in Hinduism, and it outlines 8 limbs of yoga, 8 steps on the path of yoga. And we're going to cover 2 of the heterodox or unorthodox Indian philosophies. Oh, let me pause. What makes a philosophy in India orthodox is whether or not it's based on and accepts the authority of the ancient Vedas, which are the earliest Indian scriptures and probably the oldest scriptures in humanity that are at least still followed. There are some earlier civilizations that had some kind of written stuff, but okay. So week 4 or unit 4 is on the religion of Jainism. And one of the main ideas there, I mentioned the main ideas of the other 3, is that we're eternal souls and we're stuck in the web of karma and we need to free ourselves from that. And then there are 3 major doctrines in Jainism that are really worth exploring. One is called non-one-sidedness. Reality is multiply complex. A maybe doctrine, because things are multiply complex, maybe a certain claim is true. And then because of those 2 doctrines, there's a non-violence doctrine. Just because people see things differently, there's no reason to have violence. And week 5 is Buddhism, which revolves around 4 primary truth claims. And the 4th one is an 8-fold path to enlightenment. Okay, so those are the 5 units, rearranged 1 and 2. And once again, 3 of them are orthodox, meaning they're based on the Vedas, and 2 of them are not based on the Vedas. But one thing I'll say about almost all of Indian philosophy is that they share an awful lot of beliefs, like in karma and reincarnation and enlightenment or liberation. Those are the 3 that are shared by all, except this one unorthodox school called Charvaka, which is a kind of materialist, somewhat nihilist, almost like a modern scientific attitude. Okay. All right. So that's the overview of the 5 units. And once again, before we delve into what Indian philosophy is, we should look at what philosophy is. So very, very brief intro. This is pretty simplistic. The word philosophy comes from the 2 Greek words, philia, which means love, and sophia, which means wisdom. Now, wisdom is different from knowledge, right? Knowledge is a bunch of facts. Wisdom is more about how to relate to facts and to people and events and life and how to live, right? So wisdom is deeper than mere knowledge. And philosophy is the study of wisdom or the love of wisdom. If you love wisdom, then you love learning. You love knowledge and wisdom, not just wisdom, but knowledge and wisdom, right? And philosophy revolves around what we philosophers call the big questions or the perennial questions, hence the big question mark on the side of the screen there. Here's some of those big questions. What is real? What is reality? And the subject or the discipline or the field of philosophy that studies the criteria and the nature of reality, right? What makes something real? What are the criteria which, if satisfied, means that the thing under investigation actually exists, has being, or is real, is called metaphysics. And here are some questions that typically arise about what kinds of things are real. Is God real? Does he really exist? She or it? Or are there gods? Is time real? What is the nature of time? Where is the past? Where's the future? Do they exist? Is the mind real? What is the nature of mind? Are dreams real? Is the waking world real? Are there other worlds? Are we in some kind of an illusion? Is there life after death? Those are just some metaphysical questions about what kinds of things are real. How can we know? What do we know? Can we know? What is knowledge? What's the nature of knowledge? All of those questions are in the field called epistemology, the study of knowing. here are some of the ways that we might know things, or that we believe that we know things. Well, if I can see it, smell it, touch it, taste it, or hear it, knock on it, bang on it, measure it, weigh it, bump into it with my senses, then it's real, right? Seeing is believing. But reason also tells us that certain things are real, like 2 + 2 = 4, or a triangle has 3 sides, or if X is greater than Y and Y is greater than Z, then X is greater than Z, no matter what values you put in there, right? That formula should work, right? That's what reason tells you. Intuition, how do you know? I just know it. I sense it. I feel it. It seems true to me, right? I have a kind of intuition, right? That luck is real, right? Or that someone put a curse on me. I'm just having such bad luck lately. Revelation, I got a vision from God or something like that, right? Or testimony, experts claim, according to science, right? Those are some of the ways in which we think we know. But what is knowledge? What constitutes knowledge? What criteria need to be satisfied in order for us to know? Are there different kinds of knowledge, like knowledge that statements are true, or knowledge how to perform certain procedures, or knowledge based on participating, experiential knowledge? I know what it feels like because I've experienced, or knowledge by acquaintance. I know what the color amethyst looks like, or something like that, right? Etc. Well, what's the last one? There's 4 P's of knowing: propositional, knowing that something is true; procedural, knowing how to ride a bike, etc.; participatory, I know what it feels like to dance; and perspectival, sorry, I forgot the 4th one. Well, those are 4 major kinds of knowing. There are other kinds as well. I know something because I see it from a certain vantage point. From this angle, that's what it looks like, etc. Okay. Who am I? This is questions about the nature of identity or selfhood, or what am I, right? Am I just a body? Am I really just a mind? Am I a spirit or a soul? Am I just a biological machine? Related to that is, do I have free will? Why am I here? Is there a purpose to life? Am I a victim of fate or determinism? Am I a mere accident in a meaningless motion of particles randomly moving about in the world? How should I live? This is a question of ethics or morals. What's the difference between right and wrong, or good and evil, or selfish and cooperative? Which of those should I be? How do I know? What's the nature of good and evil, right? So there's a metaphysics of ethics, and there's an epistemology of ethics, and then there's just a normative ethics. Is how should I decide this particular dilemma, and so on, right? So those are the 3 major fields of philosophy, right? Or those are the major kinds of big questions or perennial questions that human beings throughout history, and probably pre-recorded history, lying down, looking at the moon at night or the stars, asking questions, or children constantly asking why. These are philosophical matters, right? So also, there's a kind of, although the 3 main fields are the study of reality, metaphysics; the study of knowledge, epistemology; and the study of right and wrong, or good and evil, ethics, human behavior. There's logic, which is principles of reasoning, which run throughout the other three fields. And then there are so many other subdivisions, or more specific categories, like philosophy of music, philosophy of law, philosophy of science, philosophy of art or aesthetics, and so on. Okay, so that's a general intro and overview of philosophy. And now, before we actually dive into an overview of Indian philosophy, I thought it would be useful to just paint a little picture about the ancient Indian mythical era, like the ancient mythical Greco-Roman era with Zeus and all of that stuff, as depicted in the Iliad, right, with Achilles and all of that stuff, right? We've got a version of that going on in ancient India. prior to even the Vedic scriptures being written down. Okay, so here are some key elements. In the picture here, you've got pictures of Indian gods. That's a trinity there of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. You've got a picture of somebody with a henna tattoo on their hand with the Om symbol. That's the Om symbol in the middle of that circle. And this is another picture of some kind of Indian god with fire. So maybe that's Agni, the fire god. Well, let's see. So yes, there are myths, right? What are myths? They're narratives, they're stories. These are ways of spreading meaning from generation to generation, told around a campfire. This is how culture transmits knowledge and organizes meaning and structures society, right? But in the ancient Greek world, I should say, just like in the ancient Greek world with the Greek gods, anthropologists suggest that the Greek gods, and I suppose the same idea would go for the Indian gods, is something like human beings trying to make sense of the world, see something powerful and dramatic that seems like an agent, it seems intentional, like the sky seems angry or the sea seems angry, right? And when humans or animals are angry, they're loud and violent and crashing and whatnot. So if something big like the sky, it seems like a god, it's so powerful, is angry, right? We call this anthropomorphic, right? Projecting the form of anthropos or man onto big forces in nature, like sky god, sea god, fire god, sun god, all that kind of thing, right? So hence we've got the same thing in ancient Greece as we have in ancient India, right? And then oral tradition passes on these beliefs for countless generations, an unknown number of them. And in India, I'm not sure exactly when this began, but father, who's a priest, passes on this knowledge of culture and religious beliefs and myths to son in a priestly caste called the Brahmins, right? And then there's a major element of rituals, right? In the ancient Indian era, the belief in the gods was that gods are powerful, and so human beings perform sacrifices and offerings to the gods to appease them, right? And they have incantations and formulas and rituals that cultivate over time, just like you had in the ancient Greco-Roman period. Okay. All right. So that's just a general background. I'll say one more thing. Let me back up a little bit. That India's been for thousands of years, probably prior to the recorded scriptures, the earliest recorded scriptures, a kind of land protected by the Himalayan mountain range. So it's kind of isolated culturally for a long time. It's not easy to get past the Himalayas, right? But it's been a kind of spiritual laboratory, a laboratory in which all kinds of spiritual experiments had been performed. And you'll see now as we go into this. Okay, so intro to Indian philosophy. By the way, that cup on the left there represents soma, which looks like a magical substance entering into a human being. And soma was a psychedelic, according to historians and anthropologists who study the Vedas and this period. The authors of the Vedas, which are about 1500 to 1200 before the Common Era, they were oral prior to that, and then were written down around that time. So this is, 3,000 to 3,500 years ago. This is very old. The Vedas are scriptures that were written down by holy men or sages, right? The later ones go all the way up to 1500 Common Era, and those are called Upanishads. They're considered part of the Vedas, right? They're a kind of biblical validity. They're a written source of all culture and value and the entire, almost the entire Indian worldview. And they were authored by seers called rishis, right? These are by the way, the Vedas, each one of them is a kind of Bible-sized scriptural text, right? So they've got like lots of scriptures there compared to most other religions. And these rishis were considered like prophets in the West, like the prophets who had revelations from God, and God spoke to Moses or this one or that one, and these things were written down. The same thing for these people. They were considered kind of faucets for the cosmic mind of God that manifested itself through them, with the aid of soma, this kind of psychedelic, also known as an entheogen, something that puts you in contact with Theo or God. Psychedelic elixir connected them with the gods. Yeah. Okay, so this is just an interesting thing about the history of the Vedas. Okay, here are some early Indian ideas that are, most of them are throughout all 5 of the units that we're going to discuss. Karma and reincarnation. This is believed by almost all Indian philosophies except the one that's kind of skeptical, atheist materialists, the Charvaka or Karvaka school, which we're not going to really cover here. The caste system, that you're born into a station in life based on your karma and your previous reincarnations. So you move up and down the scale according to your level of soul evolution, and your freely chosen actions and choices cultivate dispositions, which is your karma and your baggage, like almost like a cosmic credit balance sheet of your deeds, and so on. So based on your karma and your level of evolution, level of your soul development, you're born into a caste, right? 4 major castes. There's the priestly caste, the Brahmins, the warrior caste, or the government, police, and all that, law, soldiers, military, martial arts, all that. That's the Kshatriya. The third is the professional caste, which is like engineers and doctors and stuff like that. And the 4th caste is like the unskilled laborers. And then below even the unskilled laborers are the untouchables. It doesn't even count as a caste. They're outside the caste system. And anthropologists speculate that this belief system came into India, and the indigenous people who were there when it arrived probably were subdued, and they became the untouchables, like real menial workers, sewer cleaners and toilet cleaners and stuff like that. Okay, so the caste system. And by the way, even in Pakistan and Bangladesh, which are mostly Islamic nations nowadays, Islam rejects the caste system doctrinally, but Pakistanis and Bangladeshis still observe it in their culture. That's how deeply ingrained it is. Okay. Another deep belief is called Dharma. Dharma and Rita, they go hand in hand. Rita, item 4 on the list there, is the cosmic order, right? That the universe has a kind of cosmic order. Like in the Greek world, the word cosmos means a kind of unified order, right? So there's a similar belief, but this order is upheld by rituals performed by the priestly caste, and those rituals are called pujas. And dharma is whatever your duty is based on your caste. You're born into a certain station based on your soul evolution, and that's your job. That's your curriculum. It's almost like, oh, you're in the 5th grade, and this is the curriculum, right? So you're in the warrior caste, and this is your curriculum. Your dharma is your duty based on the caste, right? So this is a kind of an overall belief system in what I would call a just world theory, that the universe is designed, built into it. Laws of karma guarantee cosmic justice. Everybody gets what they deserve. Everybody winds up where they belong, like water reaching its level, that sort of thing, based on your karma. So most people who believe in this system don't see it as unjust, as Westerners often think it's unfair. There's no social mobility, right? And then one of the primary things that's common to almost this entire civilization is the idea of religious duty or service to the gods, is what upholds Dharma and Rita, the structure and order and justice and rightness of the universe, right? And on the left, you've got a picture of, birth, aging, death, and then reincarnation in a long cycle going back. Okay. Now, the early Vedic culture, prior to the Vedas and in the Vedas, the focus in the early Vedas is on propitiating the gods with rituals, and that the gods are what determine whether or not you ever evolve spiritually. But in the Upanishads, the later Vedas, the shift is from gods and dharma, doing your duty, to self, to enlightenment of the individual. Yes, shifting culture. A new culture, by the way, around the time of the Buddha and Mahavira, who is the founder in this cycle of the universe of Jainism, around 500s or 5th century, 5th or 6th century before the Common Era, you had a whole bunch of wandering spiritual seekers exploring all sorts of alternative modes of belief and spiritual practices, right? And the focus was no longer rituals that appease the gods in order to keep the cosmic order, but for a search for personal enlightenment, the unity of soul, the individual soul, and the kind of cosmic soul, according to that conception. So the focus was no longer on performing religious rituals and offerings and sacrifices in temples and whatnot, but a shift into interest and focus on meditation, yoga, self-examination, self-mastery, and attaining transcendental states. Right, that's a picture of actually a modern yogi, Sri Yukteswar, was a famous guru of Swami Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote a fascinating book called Autobiography of a Yogi, which I would highly recommend. Yes, so much more philosophical and less religious ritual in the later Vedas. And then there's this idea that runs throughout this whole system called Sanatana Dharma, or the word Dharma not only means your duty, but a kind of cosmic law, right? An eternal way, almost like in Taoism, the Tao or the way, right? Sanatana means eternal. So it's the eternal law. Many different schools of Indian philosophy adhere to this idea. And by the way, the name for a school of philosophy in Indian philosophy is a darshana or darshan, which literally means vision or a view. It's come to mean a doctrine, a philosophy, a school, a philosophical tradition. But also the word has another meaning, which is a divine encounter, like a divine vision. Seeing a saint is a darshan. And Indians will go to see a saint or a guru or a swami or a yogi to get a blessing. And they call it, I'm going to get a darshan, which is a vision of God in that individual. That's like an ocean of God around us, but this is a faucet through which you can, or a portal through which, through this yogi, you could see God, right? So there are 6 orthodox darshanas or schools of Hinduism. Once again, what makes them orthodox is that they're based on the Vedas. So we're going to cover 2 of those particular schools, Vedanta and Yoga. We're going to also cover the Bhagavad Gita, which is a text that overviews 3 major schools or paths to God. But there are also several unorthodox schools. I mentioned Charvaka, which is the materialists, but there's also Jainism and Buddhism. These are considered, once again, unorthodox because they don't accept the validity or authority of the Vedas. Although both and most of these schools adhere to the same general ideas about karma and reincarnation and liberation, which is called moksha in Indian philosophy. And plus, they've all influenced each other. So you're going to see many overlaps, but they're kind of sort of slice and dice them slightly different ways, or maybe they just put different emphases on one rather than the other element. Okay, so that's the end of my lecturing overview. And now I want to guide a very simple sample meditation. So there's a little diagram there. You don't have to sit on the floor or on a meditation cushion with your legs folded, but if you're one of those people who's comfortable doing that, fine. But if you've never done that before, I would highly recommend that you don't try it the first time. I recommend that you just sit upright in a chair, not leaning back and not leaning forward like with your arms on a desk, but just sitting sort of closer to the edge of your chair so that your upper body, head, neck, and spine are lined up over your hips, which are on the chair. Whereas if you sat back in the chair, you'd be kind of leaning a little bit. Okay, so posture is important. I should have said this first, but all 5 Indian philosophies that we're going to study advocate meditation as a primary, if not the primary practice that's necessary to attain spiritual enlightenment or liberation. Okay, so we're only going to do a few minutes. This is just a little whet your appetite meditation, but I would suggest that you try it, since it's only going to take you a few minutes, once a day until week 1 begins, okay, which is technically a week from my recording this today, and I hope to be able to give this to the participants today. So hopefully when you get this, if you have time to view it, you'll have a whole week to start practicing this, so that by the time we meet live and I guide a longer practice, you will have had a little bit of practice that'll get you in the groove and make this a little more accessible to you experientially. Okay, so there are 3 features of posture, and you could see the first element, which is to sit upright in the diagram. But what you might not see, although you see over here that there's a thing showing the shoulders should go down, right? So you want your shoulders not to be rigidly upright, but relaxed. In fact, you pull them down a little bit. So relax your shoulders, soften your belly, soften your facial muscles, relax your fingers, your toes, any part of your body that's tense, loosen it up, wiggle a little and relax, and then just get upright again. So upright, relaxed, and then try to be still. Now, some of us are not used to being still. If you really have to move, you have a pain or an itch and it's too much and it's taking over your attention, then move, but move calmly, mindfully, and try not to let the movement hijack your meditative mind. All right, and then try and be still again. But ideally, don't move at all. Okay, upright, relaxed, and still. Eyes ideally fully closed in the beginning, or at least partly closed. Some people are uncomfortable meditating with their eyes fully closed for various reasons. So, do what works for you, but at least partly closed so that you kind of tune out the visual field, right? We're normally totally visually oriented, and where the eyes go, the mind goes. So if your eyes are even partly open, have them unfocused, slightly at a downward angle so that they're relaxed, and just a kind of blur in your visual field where your focus is not on what you see. You're kind of just putting your visual field in a neutral mode, okay? Eyes closed makes that easier. Okay, so we're going to begin. I'll tell you about it before we do it. We're going to check in with our senses. Just notice our 5 senses one at a time. Notice our feelings in our body, our emotions. Notice our mental states, our thoughts, right? That's what we're going to do. And then we're going to focus, after we check in, we're going to focus our attention gently on sensations of breath, moving the belly, because the movement of your belly in and out is the most detectable physical thing in your space. And it's something that you can anchor it's a physiological or physical sensation. So by focusing on that, you're kind of disconnecting from thoughts and focusing on bodily sensations, which is a way to calm the mind. And the breath comes in and out slowly and gently. And by focusing on it, it calms the mind. Okay, we're going to do that briefly. And then what you're going to notice, we'll only do this for a couple of minutes, is that your mind will naturally wander off of your breath to a thought or a sound or a pain in your knee or whatever, which is totally natural. It's not a glitch. It's a feature of the system, right? It's in terms of all mammals, I think, and many, many evolved animals have these 2 abilities: to focus and to also pay attention to the periphery, to mind wander, to check, right? You want to focus on maybe the food or the prey, but keep an eye open for the predators that might be focusing on you, right? So this is an evolved skill of focusing narrowly and then wandering or checking, right? Peripheral check, right? So this instinct, even when focusing, to peripheral check is totally natural. And we build meditative strategies around it to cultivate this ability and control it rather than have it control us. Okay, so when you notice that your mind has wandered off, you notice it and you simply return your attention back to your breath. Don't force it. Be relaxed about it. No judgment about the fact that it wandered or whatever it wandered to. Oh, I can't believe I'm thinking about that. It doesn't matter, right? All we want to do is notice that our mind has wandered off the target and bring it back to the sensations of breathing, which is the target. And in this process, every time the mind wanders and it comes back, this is a meditation exercise like a push-up or something, a rep, right? So you're cultivating the skill of maintaining focus by noticing when it wanders and bringing it back. Noticing when it wanders and bringing it back. The more you do that, the more you cultivate the ability to stay. This is like training a puppy to stay. So be friendly, be friendly towards your mind when it wanders, you notice it and you call it back. Okay. So this focusing, wandering, noticing, and returning, that's the basic thing. One of two basic things. And then the second thing we're going to do that for just a minute or so. And then we're going to relax our attention and just be aware of whatever arises in our consciousness. We're going to let go of doing mode and just be in being mode. All right. So we're going to make effort to focus on the breath. Wanders, bring it back, wanders, bring it back. That's all effort to focus, gentle effort, not straining. And we're going to alternate effortful focus with effortless kind of global open awareness or open monitoring, just noticing whatever's going on in the five senses, emotions, thoughts, mind, etc. Just taking a look. And if we have time or when you're practicing on your own, right, you go back and forth between those two modes. Don't do more than a minute or so of focus, and then a minute or so of relax, and then a minute or so of focus, and then a minute or so of relax. It's a good practice, right? You don't want to, like, by analogy with weightlifting, just keep doing push-ups. You're going to collapse, right? You want to do a few and then relax. Take a breath. You see people at the gym, they do some weights, then they sit there breathing for a minute or so, and then they do another set, right? So it's something analogous to that. It's good to alternate effortful meditation with relaxed meditative awareness. All right. So that's the overview. I wanted you to have that. And now we're going to do it. Relax all effort. And then, time permitting, repeat steps 2 to 4. That's just for your future. So let's do it. Get into your posture. And of course, you could pause this and come back if you need to take a break or something like that, right? Of course, that applies to the whole thing. But get into your posture, upright, relaxed, and still, sitting closer to the edge of your chair rather than the back. Close your eyes fully or partly, and I'm going to begin and end the meditation with 3 rings of a bell. Let that sound help guide you, okay? Let's just check in and notice how we are arriving in this moment. How am I showing up? Let me check in like a pilot in the cockpit looking at all the instruments on the instrument panel, this system, that system. So let's look at our sense of sight and our visual field and notice that it's neutralized, whether eyes are closed fully or partly. There's almost nothing going on there except darkness and light. Notice what it's like to withdraw the mind from the visual field, even when looking at it. So kind of looking at our sense of sight rather than looking through it at the world. Like taking your glasses off and looking at them rather than wearing them and looking through them and by means of them. So this is introspection, looking within. And closing the eyes directs attention within. What does that feel like? Now notice sounds and silence. Look at the sense of sound or hearing. like looking at the sense of sight, like looking at your glasses. Look at your sound glasses rather than looking through them, metaphorically speaking. Similarly, notice a sense of smell, probably neutral. The absence of smell is like the absence of sound in the world of hearing. Notice the sense of taste and the absence of taste, also similar to the absence of sound or silence, silence in the smell and taste realms. Now look at the sense of touch scattered throughout your body. Feel the weight of your body pressing your hips and thighs into the seat, hands and feet resting where they are. Feel your spine, neck, and head aligned. Feel all these bodily sensations. Feel your clothing. Feel your muscles and bones, tingling, vibrations, weight, pressure. Feel the breath moving, the rib cage and the belly. These are all connected with the sense of touch or bodily sensation. Notice any feelings, emotions, desires, mood. Notice your state of mind and qualities of mind. Are you wakeful or groggy? Scattered or focused? Is awareness clear or foggy? Notice the contents of mind. Are there thoughts, images, words, memories, expectations, comments, questions? Take a moment to take all of that in. Senses, feelings, mind. And notice how, when each one was attended to, it lit up a little, like shining a light on a stage in the theater that was in the dark, and then you see the actress. Shining the light of attention illuminates, brings things into view. Let's direct that spotlight to the breath and just anchor your awareness in the feeling of your belly expanding and collapsing with each breath, in and out. Don't control your breath. Just feel it coming in and out, soft and gentle, like a baby's breath, effortless, in and out. Try to feel the physical sensation of each in-breath and each out-breath so you don't miss one or the other. And do that in silence. And whenever your mind wanders, just notice and gently return it, instructing it to stay like a puppy. Stay here, focused on the breath. Let's do that in silence for just a half a minute or so. In and out. And now let go of all effort and settle back into just being aware. Slip out of doing mode, let go of effort, and just allow whatever arises in the total field of your awareness to come and go of its own accord, without any concern to do anything about any of it. resting in a natural state of spontaneous awareness and being, not doing. Let's do that in silence for a little while. When you're ready, ease out of that, opening your eyes. Feel free to stretch a little. I'll briefly rehearse what we did, but it's there on the screen in front of you, which you can pause and take a screenshot of that if you want, or jot it down so that you can practice this on your own. And time permitting, as it says in step 5, repeat steps 2 to 4, which is focus on the breath, mind wanders return, and then no focus, effortless being aware, alternating effort, no effort, effort, no effort. As many cycles as you like. Maybe the first time, just one cycle. Maybe second time, 2 cycles, that sort of thing. Okay, well, thank you. Namaste is a standard Indian greeting, which can be used as hello or goodbye. Like ciao in Italian can be hello or goodbye. On the left is the Om sign, which is the basic mantra in Hinduism and Buddhism and a variety of Indian philosophies. It begins and ends many mantras. Om represents the sound of the universe, the basic or primordial sound, the primary vibration. In Christianity, it says, in the beginning was the word, the sound. It represents God, but in Buddhism, there's no belief in God. So it represents something like Amen or the cosmos. It's the root of all sound and energy. Namaste, nama means bow, and aste is something like to you, or the part of me, which is the same as the part in you, bows to that, or I honor the divinity within you. There's all sorts of meanings to namaste. And prayer poses typically a kind of spiritual, religious, respectful pose of intention, a gesture, or a mudra. A mudra is a gestural pose, like, this thing, or hands like this on your lap, and all sorts of different gestures in Indian philosophy. So, namaste and thank you, and I hope to see you soon. Okay, I hope that was useful. Till next time.